So these notes are for solving literal equations. So I'm actually going to go through the odds and then we'll talk about what to do with the even. So we're going to start with number one. It says to solve for W, so we have A equals LW, which would be the formula for area of a rectangle. So area equals length times width. So basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to isolate W. So right now we have A isolated. It's all by itself. So we want to get W by itself. So what you should notice is that W is actually being multiplied right here by the width, or the width is being multiplied by the length. So to undo that, right, we want to do the opposite operation. To undo that, we would divide by length. So we would divide by the length. What I do on one side of the equation, I'm going to do on the other side. So when I do that, the lengths actually cancel over here, right? Because the length divided by length, anything divided by itself is 1. So those cancel out and would just leave us with W equals area divided by length. So at this point, we have isolated the W, and that's all we have to do. All right, so number 3 says solve for t. So this formula, hopefully you recognize, is the distance formula. Distance equals rate times time, or so d equals rt. So solve for t. Very similar to number 1. You should notice that t and r are being multiplied when they're just put together. That's being multiplied. Sorry, I was trying to put a multiplication symbol there. So to undo that operation, we do the opposite, which would be to divide. So we would divide to isolate t by r. So when we get r to the other side, so what we do on one side, we have to do to the other side. So again, just like in the last example, r divided by r is 1, so those cancel, and we're left with t equals d divided by r, or time equals distance divided by rate. So once you've isolated the t variable, that's what they asked you to do, you're done. Okay. All right, so number 5 is volume equals length times width times height. Hopefully you recognize that formula. So V equals LWH. So again, that's L times W times H. When variables are all just kind of smashed together like that, they're being multiplied. So we want to solve for H. So you could do this in 2 steps, but I'm going to show you how to do it in 1 step. So what I know is to undo this multiplication here, this multiplication and this multiplication, I'm going to do the opposite, which would be to divide. So I'm going to divide by both length and width. I can divide by both of those at the same time. So when I do that, the lengths cancel, the widths cancel here, and you're just left with H, and that's what we want. We want to get H isolated all by itself. So we have that the volume divided by the length times the width is equal to H. And that's it. We're done with that. Okay, so number 7 is going to be a little bit different because now we have subtraction. So all the others that we just did were all multiplication. So this one has some subtraction. So we're going to have to do a little bit different operations here. So looking at number 7, it says solve for C. So this is what we're solving for. We want to get C by itself. So what I see is that there is a minus S on the same side. We want to get that to the other side. So again, we do the opposite operation. So the opposite of subtracting S would be to add S. What I do to one side, I have to do the other side. So I'm going to add S over here. And so here is where several students would probably mess up. So these cancel, right? Negative S plus S, that's 0 S's. On this side right here, we have M plus S. Those are not like terms. We cannot put those together. One is an M, one is an S. They don't go together. So we're just going to rewrite that as M plus S. We can't actually put them together, but we can write M plus S. So let me redo that. So M plus S is equal to C. So we've solved for C. It's by itself. All right. So moving on to number 9. So number 9 says to solve for the height. So we have area equals 1/2 base times height. So that is the formula for area of a triangle. So 1/2 base times height. So to solve for H, few things that you should notice. First, that we have a 1/2, right? So the opposite, or to do the opposite of multiplying by 1/2, there's a few options. You could divide by 1/2. That's not what I would choose to do. I instead would probably choose to multiply by 2. So if I multiply all of this by 2, so I'm going to put that up here. Okay, I can do that there. I would have to also do that on this side. So I'll multiply this side by 2. So these will cancel. 2 times 1/2 is just 1, so those cancel. So on the other side, though, we're going to have 2a equals, and we're going to be left with base times height. So then our next step is to get the base off of the height, or the b off of the h. So the base and the height are being multiplied right there, so we do the opposite, which would be to divide by b. What I do on one side, I do on the other side. So my answer is going to be that the height is equal to 2 times the area divided by the base. So I isolated h. Again, all we're doing is undoing the operations that have been done. All right, moving on to number 11. So 11 kind of is very similar. It says to solve for m. So the first thing you might notice is that there's a square piece and then there's a divide by 2 piece. So both of those are going to be really important to see. So the first thing I would get rid of is the divide by 2. So the opposite, again, of dividing by 2 is to multiply by 2. So I'm going to multiply all of this by 2. If I do that on this side, I also have to do that on the other side. So I'm going to multiply this side by 2. So when I do that, the 2 here and the 2 here are going to cancel because that's like 2 divided by 2, which is just 1. On the other side, that's going to give me 2k equals, I'm left with mv squared. So now I need to get the v squared off of the m. I'm trying to isolate m. So m and v squared are being multiplied. So the opposite of multiplication would be division. So I'm going to divide by v squared. Do that on the other side also. Divide by v squared. So v squared divided by v squared, those will cancel. They're opposites, right? That would just give you 1. So we're going to be left with 2k divided by velocity squared is equal to m. And that's it. Number 13, solve for w. So this is the formula for perimeter of a rectangle. So perimeter is equal to 2 lengths plus 2 widths. So I want to first, again, I'm trying to isolate this w right here, so I need everything else to go to the other side. So we do reverse order of operations, just like solving an equation. So the first thing I need is I need this 2l to go to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 2l. It's a positive 2l. So I do the opposite, so subtract 2l. So when I do that, these will cancel. P and 2L are not like terms. One's a P, one's an L. They cannot go together. So we're just going to leave that as P minus 2L equals 2W. All right, so the only other thing left is to get this 2 right here away from the W. Well, 2 is being multiplied by W, so we're going to divide by 2. And when I do that, I have to divide every single piece on the other side by 2. So just simplifying that, p divided by 2 can't be simplified. That's just p divided by 2. On this one, the negative 2l divided by 2, those 2 will cancel actually, right? 2 divided by 2 is just 1. That minus is still there, so it's going to be a minus l equals, right here, that 2 divided by 2 also cancels. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and so we're just left with w. So we got w by itself, right? That was the point, is to get that w by itself. So w is equal to p divided by 2 minus l. All right. Number 15, solve for x. Y equals mx plus b. That's the formula for slope-intercept form. It's going to be really important that you can manipulate that. So this is a really, really important problem. So we want to get x by itself. We want this x by itself. So very similar to that last one. I need this plus b to go to the other side first. Opposite order of operations, we do addition and subtraction first. So I would subtract b from the other side. So when you do that, b minus b, those cancel. Y minus b, those are not like terms. You can't actually do that, put those together because they're not like terms. So we're just going to write that as y minus b equals mx. Okay, and then our next step is going to we want to get x right here by itself. So hopefully you can recognize that m is being multiplied times x. So we want to undo that. So to undo that, you do the opposite operation, which would be to divide. So we're going to divide by m. So when we do that on the other side, we're going to divide both of those pieces by m. Okay, and then you simplify wherever possible. Well, y is not divisible by m. Negative b is not divisible by m. On the other side, m and m, or m divided by m, cancels because they're just 1. So you would be left with y divided by m minus b divided by m equals x. There is another way that you could write that. Because both of these pieces on this side right here are being divided by m, you could combine that into this same answer. So it could say y minus b all divided by m equals x. That is correct also, because in this one, all of it is being divided by m. On the other side, both pieces are being divided by m. Either way, it's all being divided by m, so that works as well. Either one of those would be correct answers. All right, so moving on to number 17, solve for f. So this one's a little bit more complicated. I'm going to start by trying to get rid of that fraction. That fraction is kind of ugly and it's in the way a little bit. So I'm going to start by getting rid of that. A lot of students right here would distribute, right? Because they're trying to simplify. Well, we don't really want to distribute because then we actually attach that 5/9 to the f. And we don't want to do that. We're trying to get f by itself, so that's defeating the purpose of isolating f. So I don't want to do that. I'm not going to distribute. So instead, remember that we can multiply by the reciprocal. So a reciprocal is just a fraction flipped over. So in this case, that would be 9/5. So it's kind of in the way, but we're going to multiply by 9/5 on that side. So we would do the same on the other side. And remember that multiplying by the reciprocal results in the fraction just canceling out, right? 9 divided by 9 is 1. 5 divided by 5 is 1. So that's gone. On the other side, we would just put 9/5 times c, or just 9/5 c. That's the same thing. We're left on the other side with equals f minus 32. Now that that fraction is gone, it looks a lot simpler. So the last piece is going to be to get this negative 32 to the other side. We can do that. So we want to do the opposite, which would be to add 32. So add 32. Right. So when we add 32, now we just simplify. Well, 9/5 c and 32 are not like terms. The c is a variable term and the 32 is a constant term. Those cannot go together. So we're just going to rewrite this as 9/5 c plus 32 equals f, because these are a zero pair and they cancel out. So we have isolated the f, and that would be the solution to our problem. All right, that is it. So for pre-AP, I want you to try the evens, and then we will go over any questions you have in class.